Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Nerding Out with Nic Bodiford. I am Nic Bodiford of nerdballfantasyfootball.com or nerdballff.com, rather. Today, we're going to be breaking down the wide receiver position. We did quarterbacks the other day. We're going to go position by position through tight end, not going to do kickers and defenses. And then we're going to get to divisional stuff. We're going to do some strength of schedule. These are for later shows, not all in one show. Don't worry, Pete. But jumping right into the wide receiver position, earlier in the offseason, I had Cooper Kupp up at number one. Saw some rumblings from the great Rich Rebar about why Justin Jefferson should be one, and that made me kind of challenge my pride. Now, I had Jefferson as two, but everybody go check out Rich Rebar. He is a super sharp dude. He has called the wide receiver one before. So I went back and kind of did some more homework here. What we see with Justin Jefferson is a guy who ran about 2/3 of his routes, actually a little bit higher than that last year. 68.4% of his routes lined up out wide. He was used in a downfield capacity far more than he was all over the field. Of the 12 wide receivers in the NFL who had at least 130 targets last year in the regular season, Justin Jefferson's average depth of target was 13.3 yards. The next closest was Marquise Brown at 12.0. So Jefferson really was an outlier, and he is basically the same thing last year. I think that there were 10 or 11 guys who had over 130 targets, and Jefferson, again, I think he was number two. Actually, I can filter for that right now. But the point is, yesterday we had Justin Jefferson go on a podcast and talk about how he was going to be playing the Cooper Kupp role under Kevin O'Connell, who's the new head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. He was former offensive coordinator for Los Angeles Rams. This caused a little bit of panic, especially among Vikings fans, because Kupp's average depth of target 2 years ago was, I think it was awfully low. It was like 6.3 or something. In 2021, it was 8 point something. So clearly with Jefferson running 13.3 ADOT in 2021, it's a big difference. Now, actually, I'm looking here, and Jefferson did not qualify as a 130 target getter in 2020. I can play around with this and try to figure it out. But the point is, okay, yeah, he was 12.0 last year, minimum of 120 targets. That was fourth deepest in the NFL behind Ridley. That's surprising. Ridley, Metcalf, and Tyreek Hill. Jefferson, as mentioned before, he was mostly playing out wide. So Cooper Kupp, he tends to line up on the interior at like a 60-some% rate. I don't think that Jefferson is going to end up lining up on the inside because he is so good at everything else that it would be foolish to just to put him as the starting slot receiver for a 60% rate. But I do think that they'll probably kick it up to like 50%, which would be huge matchup wise. It would give him the chance to run against linebackers and safeties from time to time. And he was already putting, perimeter defensive backs in blenders. So I think that Justin Jefferson, one, with the role change, two, with the more intelligent offensive play calling in Kevin O'Connell. Zimmer, I understand that Zimmer accomplished a lot, but he was a guy who was still thinking that it was smart to establish the run. He thought that play action depended upon early and efficient rushing. It doesn't. There's no data to support that. This is going to be overall a more potent offense. They're also just going to run more plays. Zimmer was trying to salt the clock from start to finish. Kevin O'Connell is going to try to establish the lead. Apologies for the sirens going on back there, gang. Kevin O'Connell is going to try to establish the lead before running the ball in the second half. So anyway, Jefferson, on the whole, this team is going to score more points. He's going to be used more dynamically. I think he is the wide receiver one. Now, I have Cooper Kupp as the wide receiver two because the man is a beast. His usage, just on a volume basis, is sublime. And Sean McVay's still there, right? Like the play calling is not going to change all that much, or really at all, because Kevin O'Connell was calling Sean McVay's plays. He was using anyway. Cooper Kupp, I think he's the safe number two. Yards per out run over his career, 1.9, 2.26, 2.08, 1.95, 3.12. That is absurd. For those curious, like going over two is great. 3.12, I don't know, that might be one of the best ever on a seasonal basis. Um, but rounding out my elite wide receivers, so we have Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, and then I've got Jamar Chase in there. And what we saw with Chase was that there are a couple of receivers who were kind of pigeonholed at the beginning of their rookie season, who were used to great effect early in the year, but then the coaching staff would expand their route tree, their average depth of target, where they were lining up, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what we saw from Chase. He went from basically playing the Z receiver downfield role to taking X reps away from T Higgins. And he succeeded. I think this guy you know how good Jamar Chase is. He'll be one of the best receivers in the NFL for 10 years or more. The next tier, I have CeeDee Lamb, Stefan Diggs, Devante Adams, Deebo Samuel, Mike Evans, T Higgins, and Cortland Sutton. As for CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper is gone. Michael Gallup coming back from ACL reconstruction. Cedric Wilson is out of the building. I think Blake Jarwin is out of the building. CeeDee Lamb was already popping in all sorts of underlying metrics, and now we have this target vacuum. I understand that they brought in James Washington, who I kind of like, and they drafted Jalen Tolbert. That's great, but CeeDee Lamb, it's going to be hard for him to not finish with over 130 targets. So that's a wide receiver one. Stefan Diggs, kind of fun. So Stefan Diggs he finished, I think, as the wide receiver 7 in both PPR and half point PPR last year. And that was a disappointment. He scored 10 touchdowns. That's a disappointing year for Stefan Diggs. That's how you know someone has arrived in the position's elite bunch. Actually, I guess I should probably bump him up into the number 1 tier. His smash outcome, that the ceiling that we would want to chase, is that he gets some sort of preposterous target market share, where Gabe Davis is not as great as many of us think he is. The absence of Emmanuel Sanders, Dawson Knox being like a flash in the pan last year, these things could all lead to Stefan Diggs seeing some outrageous, over 28% target market share. It's in his potential range of outcomes. We don't need to bank on it, though, for him to be the wide receiver 5. Devante Adams, this is a bet on talent. I understand that there is a lot of target competition in Las Vegas with Darren Waller and Hunter Renfro, who is the real deal. But Devante, he's one of the best route runners, not just of this generation, but ever. And Matt Harmon of Reception with Yahoo, he's done great work quantifying just how good Devante Adams is as a route runner. He and Derek Carr played in college together, so they already have a decent connection. I think Adams, he might have to bank on efficiency a little bit more than like Lamb and Diggs, which is why I have him ranked right behind them. But he should still get his, it'd be surprised, I think, if he finished under 120 targets, and I think that he'll do a lot with those targets. Deebo Samuel gets kind of interesting because San Francisco as a whole is interesting. It does appear that Jimmy Garoppolo is all but officially gone. He's still on the team, but he's not really in the building. Reports are indicating that he's not going to quarterbacks meetings. And that seems to actually be a top-down order, not that he's protesting or anything. So it's Trey Lance time. What does Trey Lance offer? Untapped potential to an incredible degree. He will play out of structure. Kyle Shanahan won't like that, but he will look downfield, and they're gonna get Deebo Samuel the ball. If we go look through Deebo Samuel's game log after they kind of unlocked him as a dual threat option last year, Kyle Shanahan made it a point to always try to get him. I think it was a minimum of 10 touches per game. I think there was one in there that was like 9 touches in the final 10 games or whatever. But the point, okay, so actually here we go. So from this Twitter thread that I did on the position, Deebo's 2021 receiving and rushing line, 77 receptions on 121 targets, 1,400 yards and 6 touchdowns. That's through the air. So for those of you who think that he is like this gadget player, he went for over 1,400 yards through the air. He's not a gadget. He's a phenomenal receiver who can also knock heads as a ball carrier, of which he carried the ball 59 times for 365 yards, 8 touchdowns. Over the final 11 games of 2021, he averaged 12.6 12.17 touches per game. There you go. The dude's he's locked in for a double-digit workload every week. I understand that Jimmy Garoppolo offers us a little bit more in terms of dynamic short area and intermediate over the middle passing, but Kyle Shanahan will scheme touches for Deebo Samuel. I don't think there's any reason to fade him as a wide receiver one in fantasy. Mike Evans, it might actually be prudent for me to move him up a little bit here. We're still kind of digesting the Rob Gronkowski retirement fallout. But Evans, he's the only wide receiver in history to go over 1,000 yards through the first 8 years of his career. I think he's actually the only guy to do that over the first 6 and 7 years of his career. Maybe it's just 7 and 8, but yeah, he's in his own elite tier by more than one full season of 1,000 yards receiving. Chris Godwin probably going to start the season on PUP. We have, like I mentioned, Rob Gronkowski probably retired. We don't know yet for sure. The tight end position is bad. Cameron Brate's not going to be a target monster. If you have him in Dynasty, sell high on him. This is why you have him to sell high. Cade Otton is interesting, but Evans, I think he's basically just a lock to do his thing again. T. Higgins. So we already said that he was losing some X-receiver reps to Jamar Chase, but he was just going downfield, when he was not being asked to play X in the intermediate on the perimeter. So he's going to win. This team as a whole should increase their passing rate a little bit just because they have players who are continuing to get better all in the passing game. Draft T. Higgins as a back-end wide receiver one. Profit. Cortland Sutton. So I recognize that this is a flag plant, and I'm well ahead of the market on him. Sutton is an excellent, big-bodied, go up and get it wide receiver. He excels in the downfield area of the field. He's not DK Metcalf. I'm not saying that he's DK Metcalf because DK Metcalf can outrun a car, but Cortland Sutton is a very, very good downfield X receiver, maybe in the mold of Sammy Watkins, but I think he's better than that. Russell Wilson is going to bring something to Denver that we've never seen before. Nathaniel Hackett's play calling, where his first half early down play calling rates hover right around 55% over the last 3 years when he was calling plays for Green or running as offensive coordinator in Green Bay. The Seattle Seahawks last 3 years, I think, have been 51% first half early down play passing rate. I think it was like 51, 59, 52. They tried that once with Schottenheimer. It got him fired because Pete Carroll's an old school coach. So anyway, Cortland Sutton, he's worth his ADP. This ceiling is massive. He's locked in. He's obviously their number one receiver in 3 wide receiver sets, but he is locked in 2 wide receiver sets. Now, Tim Patrick and Jerry Jeudy, they might duke it out all year for access to the 2 wide receiver sets, but that just means that Cortland Sutton is going to remain as Russell Wilson's go-to. Next tier, wide receivers 11 through 15. Mike Williams, A.J. Brown, Brandon Cooks, Tyreek Hill, Michael Pittman Jr. Now, I think that this is a group of receivers that you can kind of, based on how you like these guys, I think that you can rearrange them however you like. And I will say, yes, I think that is reasonable. Mike Williams, we saw some good usage early on last season. There was a narrative that he got the Michael Thomas role, or that he was going to get the Michael Thomas role. And then that narrative remained. And that it doesn't make any sense to me because his average depth of target was reduced to what it had been through his career, but he's still lining up on the perimeter. Mike Williams was not being treated as a big time slot player like Michael Thomas was. So I don't understand why people were able to convince themselves that is what was happening. But Keenan Allen continues to get older. He's a very good route runner, and he had. Well, we'll get to Keenan in a second. But Mike Williams, his slot rate last year was 23.3%. I mean, anyway, the point I'm trying to make. Oh no, that was 2020. 2021, Mike Williams slot rates was 16.9%. So he actually played less in the slot. Okay, he didn't have the Michael Thomas role. Now his average depth of target dropped. I get that. It went from like 15 to 12 last year. That's still a downfield, big-bodied guy. Here's what we like. Draft people that are in the AFC West, draft people that are in the NFC West. They're the two best divisions in football, not the Seahawks. And they're playing against each other this year. The AFC West and the NFC West are playing against each other. These are going to be high-scoring affairs throughout the season. I want Justin Herbert, and I want Justin Herbert's go-to big-bodied downfield guy. Okay, that's the case for Mike Williams. Next player in the tier, AJ Brown. The dude, he's struggled to put together a full season, but all of his underlying metrics are phenomenal. This guy continues. If we get one full season out of AJ Brown, it's going to be special. He's one of the best receivers in the NFL, just when looking at just via the eye test, but yards per route run, 2.50 last year, 2.50. That's insane. AJ Brown is hands down. He's Terrell Owens 2.0. I understand that he's on another run first team. I do think that the Philadelphia Eagles are going to increase their pass rate from what it was at the end of last year. They started last season throwing the ball 66% of the time on first half early downs. It's number 2 in the league. They're not going to go back to that. They know that Jalen Hurts isn't that good, but they're going to try to pass more than they were at the end of the season. AJ Brown is going to hoover up targets. I like him. I think that you can draft him. I think you can take him. Should have the underdog ADP up here. Sorry, gang. Here we go. Getting the wide receivers. So AJ Brown is coming off the board at pick number 25.3. That's first or second pick of the third round. I think that is a totally fine place to take the guy. Yeah, he will return value on that. Brandon Cooks. This one's kind of simple. There are some guys that we like in the Houston Texans wide receiver room, but Brandon Cooks is still the target hog there. I know he's not a traditional X receiver, but he is very good at what he does, and he will command targets as Davis Mills number 1. And Davis Mills showed us last year that he belongs in the NFL. So Brandon Cooks, he continues to be underdrafted, and you should take advantage of that. Tyreek Hill, we actually talked a lot about Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle on the quarterbacks episode, but here's the case for Hill. He is not just a downfield receiver. He never has been. He's always been a short area, intermediate area, and downfield receiver. He's good after the catch. He is very fast. I think that he might be losing a step as he's getting older, but he's still, just because he can't run a 4.22 or whatever anymore, he can probably still go for a 4.3. This scheme gets the ball in the hands of their playmakers close to the line of scrimmage. It's going to allow him to work. Now, his failure, the downside in Tyreek Hill's potential range of outcomes, we will cover when we discuss Jaylen Waddle in a little bit, but Tyreek Hill's ceiling is still mostly intact. It won't be as prolific as it was with Patrick Mahomes, but I think that he can still return value as a high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1. Michael Pittman Jr., so we don't like to highlight situation as a primary reason to be high on someone, and we're not. Michael Pittman Jr., 6'4", 222 or 220 pounds. He's built as a traditional X receiver. His yards per route run from rookie year to sophomore year last year jumped from 1.44 to 1.95. That's a big deal. He is going from Carson Wentz to Matt Ryan, and he's still very clearly the number 1 wide receiver in Indianapolis. He will compete against Paris Campbell and rookie Alec Pierce. Those are great odds. Draft Michael Pittman Jr., the high-end wide receiver 2. Profit. Hopefully it's keeper league. Next tier, 16 through 20. Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Allen Robinson, Terry McLaurin, Jaylen Waddle. Keenan Allen has not caught fewer than 100 passes since 2016, I believe. Might be, 2016. He will fall off at some point. He's a lot older. His like yards per route run have been kind of steadily declining, but the dude will age gracefully because of the fact that he wins by route running. That is the perfect type of receiver to continue to have a very long career. So yeah, I'm not, and he gets to play in the slot. Like I think Keenan Allen continues to be the high floor wide receiver 2 for fantasy purposes that we have come to expect. DJ Moore, over the last 3 years, has put up between 1,157 and 1,193 receiving yards and exactly 4 touchdowns. He's a screaming candidate for positive regression to the mean. He's still stuck with Sam Darnold, at least to start the year. Matt Corral might be able to play a little bit better, though, and Matt Rule is banking on Corral to save his job. So I don't think that we're going to get worse than Darnold with Matt Corral, and Corral might be able to make a little more music on the run. So DJ Moore continues to be kind of, similar to Keenan Allen. He's going to be a high floor wide receiver too. He has, without a doubt, he has top 12 upside because his production over the last few years, playing with just garbage trucks at quarterback, is indicative of his underlying talent. Allen Robinson. So Robinson is definitely either in the thick of his prime or beginning the downslope of it, but the dude, I think, can still play. We saw last year he was taking plays off, and I can't blame him. He did not want to be in Chicago, and we have seen from time to time wide receivers who will just kind of quit on their team when they're done with them. Think Randy Moss. I'm not saying Allen Robinson is Randy Moss, but he's walking into a prolific role as the number 2 wide receiver for the Los Angeles Rams. We have seen guys. Robert Woods had a 3-year stretch where he finished as like wide receiver 17, 18, and 17 again. Odell Beckham Jr. 8 last year when he was in this role with Robert Woods out. Allen Robinson is one of my 2021, my primary 2021 buy lows. Next up, Terry McLaurin. Over the last 2 years has averaged 85 catches, 130.5 targets, 1,123 receiving yards, and 4.5 receiving touchdowns. Again, that's with really bad play at the quarterback position. Those QBs were Tyler Heineke, Garrett Gilbert, Alex Smith, Dwayne Haskins, and Kyle Allen. Carson Wentz is a problem in locker rooms, but he is undeniably an upgrade as compared to what Terry McLaurin has been working with over the last few years. Jaylen Waddle. Jaylen Waddle finished 8th in the NFL in regular season receptions last year as a rookie, 104 receptions. Part of Miami's wide receiver room, part of their potential range of outcomes is that Jaylen Waddle beats out Tyreek Hill and is a better NFL player in 2022 than Tyreek Hill is. Last year, we saw him start as the team's slot receiver. We talked about this again on the quarterbacks episode, but week 2 of last year, his average depth of target was 0.7 in that game. They used him as a short area receiver. They kept him in the slot for about a month, and then they rapidly expanded where they were lining him up pre-snap and what kind of routes they were having him run and his average depth of target. He went from full-time short area slot guy to diminutive X receiver. Jaylen Waddle can be the number 1 receiver in Miami in 2022. Unfortunately, at his ADP, you're kind of having to draft him there. Let's see here, where is he at? He kind of fluctuates website to website, but right now, Waddle's coming off the board as pick number 36.2. So that's end of the 3rd round. You're drafting him at like his 90 percentile outcome, which, depending on what kind of team you're trying to build, might be okay. It would be nice if he sinks a little bit in ADP. And man, Cortland Sutton is 36.6. God, you got to do that. So yeah, I'll probably end up with more Sutton than I do Waddle. Anyway, already covered those guys. Next tier. This one might take a second here, but Kadarius Toney, Adam Thielen, Marquise Brown, Amari Cooper, Darnell Mooney, Hunter Renfro, Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, Gabe Davis, Amon-Ra St. Brown. What do we have in Kadarius Toney? Starting with the coaching change. So Brian Daboll has been the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills over the last 4 years. In his first season, Daboll's first season with Buffalo, it was Josh Allen's rookie year. And they did what most coaches do when they have a rookie quarterback who's developing. They tried to, quote unquote, protect him. Their first half early down passing rate was 45%. That was 31st in the NFL, so second to last. It didn't work. And they Sean McDermott, head coach, had Tyrod Taylor at quarterback the year before. Now, Taylor, I understand that he did a good job of not throwing interceptions. He was a downfield guy, but he basically would throw away or he wouldn't throw downfield. It's not that he was some sort of terribly accurate passer. With Taylor, they had big-bodied guys. They traded for Kelvin Benjamin. They had big slot Jordan Matthews. They had Charles Clay, Jason Kroom. They jettisoned Jordan Matthews after that year, but they largely kept that receiver core intact with Josh Allen in his rookie season 4 years ago. That was, I think, 2018. Now, what was interesting about that was the guys who he did succeed with were shorter, shifty guys who could gain separation. So that was Robert Foster and Zay Jones. Zay Jones, 2.8 yards of separation at the catch point. Robert Foster was at 2.7 yards of separation at the catch point. Robert Foster, when targeting Robert Foster, Josh Allen's passer rating was 127.2. That was like 20 better than any other wide receiver on the team. And I think it was 11 better than anyone on the team, period. What Brian Daboll and Sean McDermott did is something that I've never seen before. They completely changed. I always have to catch myself there because John Harbaugh did this with Lamar Jackson, but they changed their offensive philosophy wholesale. They went from a first half early down passing rate, so first and second down in the first half of games. They went from a 45% passing rate to the following season, 52%, which jumped from 31st to 22nd. And then years 3 and 4 of that coaching duo working together, which is the last 2 seasons, 64% first half early down passing rate, second, and 60% third. Brian Daboll has learned what you do with a mobile quarterback who has accuracy issues. You do not try to give him big towering jump ball guys because these guys need to see it to throw it. So what they did in that first season after Allen's rookie year is that they began to jettison the big guys and bring in separators. The separators, namely John Brown, Stefan Diggs, Cole Beasley, and Gabe Davis. But for the ones whose names were built on this ability to separate, think of that trio. I'm not saying that Daniel Jones is going to be Josh Allen. I am saying that they win in similar ways as mobile, strong-armed quarterbacks. And I think that Brian Daboll has learned how to work with these quarterbacks. It makes sense. On first half early downs, you want to throw because you have a much higher chance of facing a run defense package than you do on third down when it's an obvious passing situation. Get these quarterbacks in situations where they can pick apart defenses that are soft against the pass. So what is Brian Daboll going to do? He's going to put Daniel Jones in a position to succeed. He is also going to roll out guys who are superior separators, not jump ball guys. You see where I'm going with this? The top two receivers on the team. I mean, the nominal wide receiver one in New York is a guy named Kenny Goliday, who is a great jump ball kind of traditional X receiver. He had some injuries last year, and I think the year before too, the hip issue. He is good, and he's also not quite the receiver that Brian Daboll loves. And I think that what is going to happen is that Kadarius Toney is going to take over as the number one wide receiver. Also want to shout out, and Pete, you knew this section was going to be huge because I love Kadarius Toney. But tuned into a Twitter live space last night, hosted by high stakes player Crack Rock, CRAKROK at CRAKROK on Twitter. Super smart guy, very plugged into a number of organizations. And he talked about what was going on in New York last year and why they made the coaching change. Basically, Kadarius Toney didn't want to show up to team meetings. The coaching staff, Joe Judge, reached out to him and said, "Hey, get your butt in here." And I guess that the Toney, I think he was a University of Florida guy, and they're kind of allowed to do what they want down there. And Toney basically said, "F you, I'm the best player on the team. I get to do whatever I want." And the ownership went, "You know what? We think you're right, Kadarius." And they got rid of Joe Judge and they brought in someone who they hope can form a good relationship with Kadarius Toney. The ownership thinks of Kadarius Toney. I mean, at least their move in this regard, if what Crack Rock is saying, that he's plugged into this organization, he hears what's going on inside. This to me indicates they believe in Kadarius Toney. Now, I know the drafting of Wan'Dale Robinson made people kind of nervous, but I just don't think that they really line up as the same player. Okay, so why should we be sold on Kadarius Toney just as a player, period? Well, Kadarius Toney, if we reduce the NFL player pool down to actually just the New York Giants wide receiver room, Toney's 3.4 yards of separation led the rest of the wide receivers by a margin of 0.4, okay, almost half a yard. And the next closest guy was Darius Slayton, and he's about to get cut. Evan Ingram, shout out to Evan Ingram. He was actually at 3.3, but he's gone from the team and he's not a wide receiver. Toney's separation, that is elite levels of separation. I understand that he had a limited sample size, but that is good. It's a good sign. And when we look at NFL receivers with a minimum of 50 targets on the year, Kadarius Toney's 27% targets per route run rate ranked 5th in the NFL. Okay. Minimum 50 targets, ranked 5th. The guys he was behind, Antonio Brown, Devante Adams, A.J. Brown, Cooper Kupp. Now, Kadarius Toney was tied, with Deontay Johnson, Deontay Hardy, Justin Jefferson. Actually, he was 0.01 ahead of Justin Jefferson. Kadarius Toney looks like the next coming of, I don't know, name your favorite. I mean, he profiles extremely similarly to Stefan Diggs, which is really perfect. Their height, weight, and 10-yard split in the 40-yard dash are very similar. And he beat Diggs in both jumping activities at the combine and both shuttle drills. His yards per route run was 2.14. That was number one, minimum 50 targets, number one among all 2021 rookies last year, and it was 11th best in the NFL. I don't think people are understanding that Kadarius Toney's ceiling in year 2 is Stefan Diggs. And I know that that's crazy. And I know that he's got some strange off-field stuff. He's a big personality, and it's possible that he gets himself in trouble or whatever, but what we're looking at is a man who profiles as an elite NFL wide receiver, and he is with my favorite offensive play caller in the NFL because of what he did, because of how he changed his run first ways to go full pass first. I think that this is one of the best situations that Kadarius Toney could be in the NFL. And for this reason, it is hard for me to not move him up past wide receiver 21. I know I'm already ahead of the market there, but this dude has top 5 wide receiver potential here. Okay, moving on. We're going to speed things up because I know I just spent 10 minutes talking about him. Adam Thielen, still a good route runner. He's played in the slot before. I think that he can be a 1B type of Cooper Kupp role for Kevin O'Connell. He's good at the game. I know he's older, but he's good at the game. This offense as a whole is going to score more points. He's Kirk Cousins. He's in a mind meld with him in scoring position for a long time. Adam Thielen, just book him for a wide receiver 2 finish. Marquise Brown, first year with the new team, but not first year with Kyler Murray. Nuke Hopkins is out for the first 6 weeks of the season. We'll find out where he's going to play, if he's going to line up in the slot primarily or on the perimeter. But Kyler Murray is one of the best downfield passers in the NFL. I think actually in various metrics, he is the best downfield passer in the NFL. It's a good place for Hollywood Brown. Amari Cooper, I think I actually need to drop him. It's looking like
Deshaun Watson is going to be suspended for a full season or more. I mean, we have so many conflicting reports, but the thing is, what I am reading from the news cycle is that Deshaun Watson is going to be out for at least a year, maybe longer. So Amari Cooper is going to be catching passes from Jacoby Brissett, who's really, really bad. They brought in David Bell. I think the most likely outcome for the Browns is that Nick Chubb leads the league in carries. Probably going to drop Amari Cooper down to the wide receiver 3 range. Darnell Mooney, just going to eat. Not a lot of guys there that he's got to compete with. 35-year-old rookie wide receiver Velus Jones. He's 26 or something. I don't know. But Mooney is the go-to guy. He was one of the few, I think, who went over 130 targets last year, which is kind of remarkable because he is actually I'm going to set the minimum to 120, but he's just a downfield receiver. Okay, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm opening up something. Anyway, the point is, Darnell Mooney, even though he is a big-time downfield guy, he had 134 targets. That's special for a guy who should just be a Z receiver. Justin Fields continues to look downfield. I like Mooney as a volume play. I also think he is talented. Hunter Renfro is just a friggin' beast. And shout out to Dwayne McFarland, who has done fantastic work on Hunter Renfro and all of his underlying metrics. He is a fantastic route runner. He is not going anywhere. I think that he is a 100 catch candidate. Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson. I've detailed Chase Claypool a lot, so I'll keep it simple. The biggest thing last year was that he didn't score all that many touchdowns. See if I got this anywhere in here. But basically what happened was in Chase Claypool's rookie year, between his rookie year and his sophomore year, the man, he had remarkably similar statistics. Okay, so in his first season in 2020, 62 passes, 109 targets, 873 yards, 9 touchdowns, 10 carries, 16 yards, 2 touchdowns. 2021, 59 receptions, 3 receptions, 105 targets, 4 fewer targets, 860 yards, 13 fewer yards, but only 2 receiving touchdowns. 14 carries, 96 rushing yards, 0 touchdowns. So he went from 11 TDs 1 year with basically the same workload to 2 touchdowns. That is called variance, and it will regress to the mean. I think that Chase Claypool is one of the better young wide receivers in the NFL. He is going to continue to grow. I understand that the quarterback position in Pittsburgh is a little bit strange, but targets are earned, and it's not like a running back. It's not like where you just are given, however many however many carries, because the team needs you to have this many. Targets are earned. Now, if we want to look at Chase Claypool, I know, you guys know I love him too, just like Kadarius Toney. Over the first 2 years of his career, his yards per out run mark are 1.71 and 2.0. That's great. Like that is really friggin' good. This guy, he's basically all of his metrics, all his physical profile is basically just that the guy is like a 20 pounds stronger version of Martavis Bryant. That is the kind of profile that I want to bet on. Moving on to Deontay Johnson. This guy's just a freak route runner. He is one of the best route runners in the NFL. I'm not going to go into the underlying metrics on this one. Just take my word for it. We're talking targets per out run. We already mentioned him, actually. He was like top 6 in targets per out run last year with a minimum of 50 targets. His yards per out run marks are very good. I think that in a different situation where they don't have a bunch of talented wide receivers on the team, he's like a no-brainer wide receiver 1 in fantasy. But he is in Pittsburgh, and it is a deep wide receiver room. So for our purposes, we have him as a wide receiver, borderline wide receiver 2/3. Now, the thing that I just want to bring up with these 2 wide receivers, if we're looking at average draft position on Underdog, we have Deontay Johnson going as the pick number 41.1. So that's middle of the 4th round. Chase Claypool can be had at pick 103.7. I don't think that's production wise that there's a whole lot of daylight between these two dudes. So yeah, I'm going to be taking the guy who you can have, who you can find 6 rounds later. Gabe Davis. Case for this one is pretty simple. There's less target competition. He broke out last year. He's a very good downfield receiver, and he now has the number 2 role in one of my favorite offenses in the NFL, playing with one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in Josh Allen. So I understand that his ADP is kind of getting out of hand, and so you should be conscious of what kind of roster construction you're engaging in. Like if you took Josh Allen early, you probably want to take Gabe Davis. But I think that he's a safe bet for a wide receiver 3 finish and can get up into the wide receiver 2 range. Amon-Ra St. Brown, weeks 13 through 18 last year had a yards per route run mark of 2.75. That is phenomenal. And yes, it is a smaller sample size, but that is still sustained over a 6-week period. That's not a fluke. ARSB is a real deal. He will have more target competition, but again, targets are earned. He's already got a connection going with Jared Goff. ARSB, I think he's a safe wide receiver 3 with very solid upside. Next here, wide receivers 31 through 43. Elijah Moore, Chris Olave, Russell Gage, Jerry Jeudy, DK Metcalf, Juju Smith-Schuster, Rashad Bateman, Tim Patrick, Brandon Ayuk, Drake London, Sky Moore, Tyler Lockett, Devonte Smith. Elijah Moore had promising underlying metrics last year on a per route, per snap basis. It's a crowded wide receiver room, but the talent profile is there for him to take a step this season. Chris Olave is very interesting. If Michael Thomas is on the field, I think I've already compared this. Actually, no, I haven't done this on a podcast yet. Everyone should go look up the Cincinnati Bengals in T. Higgins' rookie season. What we have with T. Higgins and Chris Olave are 2 exceptional route runners who are athletically less than capable, but you don't have to be athletic at the wide receiver position to succeed. In the Bengals situation, we had an aging number 1 wide receiver in AJ Green. In New Orleans, we have one with maybe one good ankle and Michael Thomas. There is a good slot receiver or in Tyler Boyd. Here we have Jarvis Landry. I think it's a very similar situation. I think the play volume is going to be fairly similar. So Chris Olave, now his access to a big time and T. Higgins finished as like a wide receiver 3 that year. Just go look up his fantasy finish, go look up his statistics. I've already done all of this projection. I just don't have it in front of me right now, but I've come to the conclusion that I think that a T. Higgins rookie season finish for Chris Olave is very reasonable, and he has access to a much higher ceiling if Michael Thomas does not play for any extended period of time due to the nagging ankle issues. Russell Gage was recruited by Tom Brady to play in Tampa Bay this year. Chris Godwin's going to start the season on PUP. They lost another short to intermediate interior weapon in Rob Gronkowski. Now, Gronk may still play 8 games this year for the Bucs, but half might be in the postseason. I think Russell Gage is going to friggin' eat. Jerry Jeudy, I have him in the same tier as Tim Patrick because I think that the 2 wide receiver set battle is a lot more open than people are understanding. Tim Patrick, I believe he's led the Broncos in receiving touchdowns over the last 2 years. We should double check that. But the point is, Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton got paid this offseason. They got extended this offseason. Did Sutton get his extension in November of last year? Point is, over the last year or so, those 2 guys have been paid. Jerry Jeudy has had issues with the law, and he has been injured. I think Jeudy still has a ton of promise, but I think that we should consider him more side by side with Tim Patrick than we should be considering him as a wide receiver 2. DK Metcalf, top 8 talent in the NFL, and 32 out of 32 quarterback situation in the NFL. Plus, I think the Seahawks ran like 2.4 fewer games than the Bills did last year. Dwayne McFarland has pointed that out on Twitter. That dude is the man, by the way. The play volume and the quarterback situation is so bad. It's going to be really hard for Metcalf to succeed. He will have weeks where he just comes screaming in there like an albatross and just lights it up. And if you want to draft him in best ball, I friggin' get it. But I think on a week-to-week basis, this dude could give you a donut or two. I mean, if the number of winning weeks is higher than 8, then I will be wrong here. Then you will lose out by not drafting DK Metcalf. But if it's only like 6 smash weeks, man, that's not going to be enough. Juju didn't get a big contract. I think it's a 1-year deal. He's either going to flop or he's going to have a very fruitful season. I'd like to think that in this offense he can succeed. Ben Roethlisberger's arm has fallen off. There were a lot of guys there that were competing for looks in Pittsburgh. Juju still has to compete here though. So I think taking him as a wide receiver 3 or 4 is more so the ticket than banking on him highly. He is, let's see here, he's not even in the top 100 picks though on underdog ADP. So I think, yeah, you got Sky Moore at 95 and MBS at 97. So yeah, Juju, I like him, like employ Ian Hardett says, don't hate the player, hate the ADP. Well, we like the ADP and we only are a little bit afraid of the player. So I think it's fine to roster Juju, but don't bank on him as a big time producer. Rashad Bateman really had a bad year last year. He was injured for a lot of it though. And there's like 100 and what have you targets missing from the offense. So yeah, Marquise Brown, 139 targets last year. It's going to be hard for Rashad Bateman to not produce as a wide receiver 3, just purely on volume. And again, we don't want to highlight situation, but it's possible that he's actually a lot better than we saw last season as a rookie when he was coming off core muscle surgery, which is a big deal. We already covered Tim Patrick. I like him a lot. Brandon Ayuk, Ayuk. So we've had him getting in Kyle Shanahan's doghouse. We have positional target competition and George Kittle competition, but Devo has had some injury issues in the past. Things don't always go according to plan. Like I'll stop quoting him, but like McFarland likes to say, things don't always go according to plan. Over Ayuk's first 2 years in the league, his yards per route run have been 1.73 and 1.68. That is promising. It's not great, but it is promising. His yards after catch, 4.8 yards after catch per reception his rookie year, 6.2 last year. Those are fantastic numbers, and that's not typically a sticky stat. But one, it's his profile. It's how he plays, and 2, he's in the best yards after catch scheme in the NFL. So I like Ayuk as a borderline wide receiver 3 / wide receiver 4 this year. Drake London, he's just going to eat. He's going to compete with Kyle Pitts to be Atlanta's number 1 wide receiver or number 1 pass catcher. It's a tough situation with Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder there, but I'm hoping that Arthur Smith learned a bit in his first, now entering his second season as a head coach in the NFL. And London's profile is fantastic, and he's built like a traditional X. He's 6'5" or whatever. He's big. He's thick. He's not just some string bean. The kid can play. Sky Moore has a chance to lead Kansas City in targets. Now he also has a chance to be 4th in the pecking order. So we have to be prudent with where we're drafting him. And he's coming off the board as, 95 on underdog. So that's fine. I mean, that's probably drafting him as like a 75 percentile outcome. His means of succeeding here are Juju is done. His knees have betrayed him. Marcus Valdes-Scantling is as bad as he appears to be. MVS is good at drawing attention, but he's not very good at catching the ball. And, we should ignore drops to some degree, because if he's getting targets, then that's what we want. But we're talking about potential ranges of outcomes here. Sky Moore could finish ahead of those 2 guys. And hey, maybe Travis Kelce takes a step back due to his age. I don't think he will, but it's in the range of outcomes. Tyler Lockett, shoot, it's the same thing as DK Metcalf. He could be one of these. He could be Geno Smith's safety blanket. I don't think it's going to be Drew Lock who takes the helm here. But play volume is going to be really low. It's just a dire situation there. Devonte Smith had a successful rookie year in the NFL last year. Now I understand that AJ Brown is just going to come in and suck up targets, but Devonte Smith, he was a good NFL player. Yards per route run, 1.77. That is entirely reasonable for a rookie. In fact, it's fairly strong. His targets per route run mark was 20%. That is good. It is not great, but it is good. He was around guys like Tyler Lockett, Odell Beckham, Christian Kirk, Adam Thielen, Amari Cooper, Gabe Davis, Mike Evans at 19%. And, we can get into sample size and what have you there. But the point is, Devante Adams proved that he is a starter in the NFL last year, and we want to bet on talent at the wide receiver position. Next year, 44 through 53, Kenny Goliday, Rondale Moore, Marcus Valdes-Scantling, Garrett Wilson, Christian Kirk, Chris Godwin, Jameson Williams, Michael Gallup, Jamison Crowder, DeAndre Hopkins. Kenny Goliday, he's going to fight for the number one job. He is good, as I detailed earlier. He's just not necessarily the perfect wide receiver fit for this situation, but he's good, and we like to bet on talent. So I think that taking him as a wide receiver 5 is fine. Rondale Moore. More is interesting because like you go into the advanced metrics here, and it's good. Yards per route run mark 1.64. Not great. Yards after catch 446. That's pretty friggin' good. Targets, he caught 54 of 64. Oh, and I think he really popped in the targets per route run realm. Yeah, he was 23rd in the NFL with a minimum of 50 targets. Good for 25% rating. I mean, that's no, actually he was better than that. He was 7, 8, 12. So again, he was tied with a couple guys tied for 11, like 10th in the NFL in targets per route run. Now, here's the thing. He had a low ADOT. Some of it was not real. Okay, he was not winning downfield on these looks. So he's sort of in this nebulous category of like, some of the stuff looks good. We didn't get as much as we wanted out of him, but I think that he's a bet on talent candidate. And there's a situation where DeAndre Hopkins is locked to the perimeter. Rondale Moore takes the majority of slot reps. Marquise Brown takes the other perimeter role that Arizona likes to keep their guys locked to one side. I think it's suboptimal, but it's what they do. Rondale, I don't think you got to break the bank to get him. Yeah, he's going outside of the top 100 picks on Underdog. So I think that he's good. He's a good guy that you want to bet on, but it's a bet. It's not a bank. Okay, you're not banking on him. You're betting on him. Marcus Valdes-Scantling, we already really covered this. He's now the downfield guy in Kansas City. They paid him a decent amount of money. We like Patrick Mahomes. Now, the thing is, he couldn't get it done with Aaron Rodgers. He'd get it done sometimes with Aaron Rodgers, but Rodgers hated the fact that he would only run routes exactly as he was supposed to. He would never freelance when the play would break down. He's not that good. On a talent basis, is he like a top 15 downfield receiver? Yeah, probably. But he's probably not top 10. And as a wide receiver position as a whole, he's probably less talented than guys in the top, 60. We're betting on situation there more than we're betting on talent, and that's a little dangerous. Okay. Garrett Wilson, it's just crowded. He's promising rookie. It's a crowded situation in New York Jets wide receiver room, and we don't yet know what Zach Wilson is, but we like to bet on talent, and Zach Wilson could be good, and it's a good scheme. So Garrett Wilson, again, can you get him outside of you can get him outside the top 100 picks. So I don't have a problem with taking him at ADP. I don't think. Christian Kirk, they paid him a ton. Okay, they're gonna give him looks. Now, whether that's warranted and there's some strangeness in that wide receiver room, they paid him a lot of money. They're gonna try to justify that at least to start the seasons. He needs to be playing in the slot, as does maybe Laviska Shenault. But we like money. We like when guys get paid. Doug Peterson is he's a good coach, and he's a moderate play caller. Chris Godwin,
He's going to start the season on PUP. I think that's all but sewn up. I think he damaged ACL and MCL. PUP now is physically unable to perform. It's a minimum of 4 games out, not 6. So he could be back by week 5. Don't remember when their bye is, but he might be back in October. He might also be back a little bit later than that. I'll have to go double check his injury timeline, but yeah, Godwin is a bet on talent guy, and he is entirely dependent upon whether ADP allows you to find value. I would not be drafting him. Yeah, Chris Godwin's going at 60.0 overall on Underdog. He's sandwiched between Darnell Mooney and Amari Cooper. Okay, guys that are right after him. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Elijah Moore, Devonte Smith, Adam Thielen, Drake London. I'm taking all those guys over Chris Godwin, I think. I mean, maybe best ball, we can kind of talk about some stuff, but yeah, that's kind of tough. Edwin Porras is doing good work on Chris Godwin. So follow him, and Adam Hutchinson, dude, is crushing it. So follow their advice on your roster construction there, but taking him at the end of the 5th round at pick 60, you're kind of drafting him as though you expect him to be back in week 5, and it's not an isolated ACL tear, so that's not great. I mean, he could be out till like week 7 or 8, I think. Yeah, I don't love that. Okay, so moving on to Jameson Williams. Williams is recovering from an isolated ACL tear. He's a rookie in Detroit. Again, is a crowded receiving room, but Williams profiled as the best wide receiver in the 2022 rookie class. In his potential range of outcomes is an entrance like Odell Beckham Jr. He's very good. He's a downfield X receiver. I think that he could come back and kind of take the NFC North by storm. He could also take some time to develop, because when we're playing with rookies, we're playing with rookies. So, all that said, you don't have to take him in the first 100 picks. So go ahead. And I think just add him, but understand he's going to give you a 0. And if you're in a league with, he's going to give you a 0 for a few weeks, because he's probably starting on PUP. And if you're in a league with a short bench, Jameson Williams might not be the guy for you. All right, that's why I grouped all these guys together. Same thing goes with Michael Gallup. But I think that Gallup had an isolated ACL tear. I don't think that there was any MCL damage in there. So go double check with the aforementioned fantasy doctors that I mentioned here. Make your judgment accordingly. But Gallup and Williams probably have a better chance of returning before Chris Godwin does. Jamison Crowder is now maybe the starting slot receiver in Buffalo. What's interesting about him is that he's duking it out with Isaiah McKenzie and maybe Khalil Shakir, a rookie, for starting slot reps. Crowder has already shown us what he is. He is a good slot receiver who you can't bank on for crazy production, but he is good. He's a good separator. Isaiah McKenzie is the home run guy. So for this duo, we just need for McKenzie and Crowder, we just need to continue to monitor camp reports, because if one of these guys does separate, we're going to get a very good depth piece for our fantasy roster. And it's worth noting that last 2-3 years, whatever, that Cole Beasley has been on the Buffalo Bills, they would launch targets his way against zone defenses. Now, Gabe Davis is ascending. Stefan Diggs is a freak. That might not be sticky, right? They might continue to develop things, and Daboll's gone, so now they're relying on Sean McDermott, blah, blah, blah. But Crowder, if he wins this job, has a very, very fruitful PPR season, as maybe even like a top 40 receiver. So it's worth paying attention to this one. DeAndre Hopkins, he will miss the first 6 weeks of the season because he took steroids, and accidentally or otherwise. And then he'll come back in week 7 and he'll be a fantasy wide receiver too.
wide receivers 54 to 60. Tyler Boyd, Josh Palmer, Robert Woods, David Bell, Jacoby Myers, Christian Watson, Treylon Burks. This is an interesting tier. Tyler Boyd and Josh Palmer are both kind of this bizarre, like wide receiver emergency the traditional term is handcuff for the running back position. I like to say primary bell cow backup. But these two wide receivers are very similar in what they might be able to do if one of the starters misses time. Tyler Boyd is competing. He's third on the depth chart behind Higgins and Chase, who will continue to separate as target monsters. But Boyd will, Zach Taylor has shown that he likes to target guys based on certain defensive matchups. Like we called a number of CJ Uzoma smash plays last year because they will scheme up that short to intermediate slot route guy against the right defense. They'll probably still keep doing that with Tyler Boyd, but Boyd will be very matchup dependent. If one of the other guys misses time though, then he rockets to like borderline top 24. Josh Palmer is a promising receiver in relief duty last year. He friggin' smashed. He played all over the formation. I think that he's the heir apparent for Keenan Allen, but something that Evan Silva has talked a lot about, the LA Chargers offense lacks speed. Mike Williams, a downfield guy, but he's more so a burly one. He doesn't burn anybody. Keenan Allen is getting older. He's more of a route running technician than he is like an elite speedster separator kind of guy. He will break ankles, but he's just not beating you in a foot race doing it. Palmer is also not an elite speed guy. Jalen Guyton is. And so Palmer's range of outcomes where he kind of fails is that the Chargers need to get speed on the field. They need someone to stretch the field, because if the defense can just keep safeties locked in like the short to intermediate area, or they can easily get to Mike Williams when he's going downfield, that's a problem. They need someone to keep defenses honest running deep. So that's how Josh Palmer fails. How he wins is that he just like beats out Keenan Allen. I don't think he's going to do that. But like maybe next year he could. I compared him on Twitter to Chris Godwin in terms of career arc, who's like very talented dude, just kind of stuck behind a log jam, and eventually will, I think, hopefully break out. It might not be this year, but like dynasty, you bet your butt I have him on my taxi squad. Robert Woods coming off ACL tear. He's healthy, or healthy enough to play. Treylon Burks, the rookie. We'll just cover these two guys, the Titans wide receivers now. Woods has been a very, very competent NFL wide receiver. I think he's on the downslope of his career, but he can still be productive. Burks was drafted as the immediate replacement to AJ Brown. Burks is good after the catch. He's got a big body. I know it's like Mike Renner that might have compared him to AJB. I don't recall. Actually, I think it was Jeremiah, but one, Burks has asthma, and two, he showed up so out of shape that Mike Vrabel, head coach, said, yeah, he's out of shape, and asthma doesn't have anything to do with it. That's how badly out of shape is. So if he is as good as we think he is, he'll get targets. The team will just justify it, because AJ Brown basically forced his way out, and they had to take Treylon Burks to replace him. They're going to have to justify that, so they're going to force feed him targets. But I don't know. It's possible that in his potential range of outcomes that he isn't as good as we hope he is. And Robert Woods just separates as the clear number one here. So keep that in mind when drafting both of these guys. That is their potential range of outcomes. If Burks is somewhat as good as we think he is, and he's able to get in shape by week one, then he'll eat. And Robert Woods won't be a top 36 wide receiver. Probably won't be a top 36 wide receiver. I mean, I'm not ranking either of these guys there right now, but just it's a situation to monitor. Okay, David Bell, I was super into him when it looked like Deshaun Watson might be playing the majority of the season. Now it doesn't. Bell, highly productive in college. His breakout age was like 19 and a half. 20, breaking out at 20 is good, because it means that you're beating up on 21 and 22-year-old men. He is his athletic profile is like similar to that of Jarvis Landry. But we have to be careful to not count that twice. If it was freak athlete profile, then we'd be talking about David Bell as a top 36 potential draft pick. We're not. We're already baking his lack of athleticism into his ADP as is, which means that you should not fade him at ADP, and definitely don't fade him. I take him in the second round in a dynasty draft. Okay, in a rookie dynasty draft, not a startup dynasty draft. I like David Bell a lot. He's got the tools, and again, you don't have to be athletic to be a very productive NFL wide receiver. I mean, seriously productive NFL wide receiver. But the situation there is just not great. Low passing volume, and Jacoby Brissett and Amari Cooper's already there. Blah blah blah. Jacoby Myers actually probably should move up a little bit. The dude has been a very good slot receiver in the NFL. He's clearly, I think, the number one wide receiver in New England. Mac Jones is continuing to progress. If Myers gets a little bit of positive touchdown regression to the mean, then we're cooking with oil here as like probably a wide receiver 4. Christian Watson is we think he's pretty good. He's rookie. We think he's pretty good. He's in Green Bay though, which means 1, there's a bunch of targets available because of Devante Adams' departure, but 2, he has to work with the quarterback who won't throw the ball to receivers who he does not form some kind of relationship with, and it is like possible that he just gets frozen out by Rodgers. It's also possible that he gets 120 targets and is very productive. It's another situation we have to monitor. And I think given the ADP, not going in the top 100 targets on underdog. So, or top 100 picks on underdog. So for reference, that's top 8. Actually will pull up the next page just to see where it is. Christian Watson. Christian Watson's going at 115.4. So that's mid to late 9th round. That's probably drafting him at like his 80th percentile outcome. Yeah, you have to like him to draft him there. Like I would prefer to draft Tim Patrick a couple picks later, or Jacoby Myers, or Kenny Goliday, or Jameson Williams. All right, so Christian Watson might not be your time guy, but you know he has a situation where he succeeds. Okay, next tier. Oh, actually, there you go, Pete. We're gonna cut it off here in just a second. So on my Twitter thread, all that I did after this group, we got through top 60 wide receivers, and I have some notable leftovers. Jarvis Landry would be relevant for our purposes if Michael Thomas is unable to play. Corey Davis barely has been able to produce. I think he's got 1 wide receiver 3 finish. He's entering year 6, I think. Dwayne McFarland did a phenomenal article for Pro Football Focus, where even if you're not a subscriber, you can go read most of it, and it will give you the breakout data for wide receivers. He won't tell you who the breakouts are. You have to do that on your own, given where the paywall kicks in. But he gives you the data, and Corey Davis barely qualifies as a guy who could have a better than wide receiver 3 breakout this year. He's never finished wide receiver 1 or 2. I don't think that he's not that guy, pal. But yeah, I'm not drafting Corey Davis, which makes me feel good about Elijah Moore. Jalen Tolbert, he could take the number 2 role in Dallas. Probably more likely takes the wide receiver 3 role, but with Michael Gallup out, 3 wide receiver sets are probably going to be CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Tolbert, and James Washington. And Washington and Tolbert will duke it out for who gets to stay on the field when Michael Gallup returns from his ACL injury. So Tolbert is a good guy to draft and stash, and you might be able to start him week 2. Taekwon Thornton runs a 4.3 40. I think it was 4.38. Now he's undersized. He's tall, but he's 180 some pounds. Actually, I'm going to look that up because I think he could actually be even a little bit faster than I'm giving him credit for. this offense needs someone who can stretch the field. They brought in Devontae Parker, but we've already been down that road. We know what he has to offer. Okay, good. Glad I did this. Taekwon Thornton, 6'2", 183 pounds, ran an official 4.2840 and a friggin' 1.41 10-yard split. That's the fastest I've seen since Chris Johnson ran a 1.40. That's insane. That's the first guy that I've seen go under 1.48 since Cam Akers. That's crazy. So Taekwon Thornton, he might not be this big time voluminous guy, but he could very quickly win the downfield starting receiver role in New England. And he's very much worth a late round flyer pick because of that. Shout out to Pete. Our guy Pete, he likes Allen Lazard a lot this year. I don't think that he has the underlying profile as a guy who can break out, but there's a huge target volume or vacuum there. And he has a relationship with Aaron Rodgers. And so to that point, he could be the guy that takes the starting receiver role, but I think it's just going to be Aaron Jones, Robert Tonyan, and then a bunch of bad receiver production. But he's a name to note. Isaiah McKenzie, we already talked about him with Jamison Crowder. In Arizona, someone is going to play the X receiver role with DeAndre Hopkins out for 6 weeks. Could be Antoine Wesley, could be AJ Green. Just monitor the situation. We already talked about James Washington. Justin Ross. So Justin Ross is one of the most athletic receivers that I've ever seen. I'm not being hyperbolic. And yes, he had the neck injury, and this is why he's a great story that I'm rooting for. But I've gone through his high school Spark data, and I've gone through his NFL pro day data, not NFL combine data, but his pro day data. The athletic profile is the worst that I have ever seen. I think it's the worst I've ever seen. I think his vertical jump was like 27 inches or something. We're talking about offensive linemen who are beating that. You don't have to be athletic to succeed in the NFL at wide receiver. You don't. I'm just saying it's the worst that I've ever seen. Now he's playing with Patrick Mahomes. So, hey, anything can happen. He could become a route running technician, but just need to give you guys the full potential range of outcomes there. I'm going to scroll down and just take a peek, make sure I'm not missing anybody else that I wanted to touch on. George Pickens, okay, he's a perimeter guy in Pittsburgh. He went to college with their new quarterback, Kenny Pickett, who's not their new quarterback. He will be their new quarterback probably by like week 4. But maybe worth a bench stash. Alec Pierce, we thought he was going to be the number 2 in Indianapolis. He's a rookie, but Paris Campbell is evidently emerging as the number 2 there. So, don't love that. Jawan Jennings is going to be the number 3 wide receiver in San Francisco, but probably the number 4 target. He's not going to lose his job to Danny Gray. Laviska Shenault, mostly out on him, but there's still a chance. He's not old enough yet that we should cast him aside, but there's still a chance. The odds might be stacked against him, but there's still a chance. And Romeo Dubs, whatever. He could beat out Christian Watson in Green Bay. I don't think he will, but he could. So monitor the news. And for dynasty purposes and very, 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 very deep leagues, Wan'Dale Robinson, New York Giants, and Calvin Austin, Pittsburgh Steelers. Couple names for you. All right. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I appreciate you. I appreciate your viewing. I appreciate your listening. I appreciate your comments, even the snarky ones. Thank you so much. We'll see you on the next one. We're going to be breaking down running backs real soon here.